Hello everyone, this is Paris. Welcome to BudgetHolics. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Bitcoin Futures ETF. If you have no idea what an ETF or a futures contract is, stay around, I'll simplify it as much as I can. However, if you want to learn more about what Bitcoin is, check out my previous video for which I leave a link here and down in the description, where I explain exactly what Bitcoin is and what it can bring to the world of money. Now, before we break everything down, please leave a like as it helps me immensely with the YouTube algorithm and it helps other people find this content. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. The easiest way to think of an ETF is as a basket in your grocery store. When you walk into your grocery store, you fill the basket with different items. This is the same as an ETF. However, instead of grocery items, you fill the basket with different stocks, for example. For all intents and purposes, you can buy an ETF as you would buy a traditional stock such as Apple or Tesla. However, the price of the ETF depends on what's inside the basket. There are different kinds of ETFs. We talked about the stock ETF example. However, there are other ETFs that contain different commodities such as gold and copper. And now a new ETF came that tracks the price of Bitcoin. Naturally, the Bitcoin ETF should follow the price of Bitcoin. But how is this done? This is usually done by the company that issued the ETF when they hold the underlying asset, in this case Bitcoin, in reserve. In other words, the only thing the company that issued the ETF would have to do is keep enough Bitcoin in reserve to satisfy the demand. This would have been called a spot ETF. However, the SEC ruled against the issuance of a spot ETF, and the ETF that went live on Tuesday is instead a Bitcoin Futures ETF, which tracks the Chicago Mercantile Exchange futures market. It trades with ticker symbol BITO. Going back to the basket analogy, instead of having Bitcoin inside the basket, you now have Bitcoin futures contracts. A futures contract is an agreement between two parties, let's call them A and B, stating that party A will sell to party B a specific asset at a predetermined price at a specific date, referred to as the expiry date. In other words, if you held a futures Bitcoin contract, you would either agree to buy or sell Bitcoin at a later date at a price decided on today, regardless of what the price is going to be in the future. So in the case of BITO, instead of pro shares having to hold Bitcoin in reserve, they have to hold enough Bitcoin futures contracts to support the price of BITO. But what's the real difference between the two? A simple Bitcoin spot ETF would follow the real price of Bitcoin in real time. However, a Bitcoin futures ETF follows the price of Bitcoin futures contracts. In other words, it reflects the market sentiment of where the price of Bitcoin is going to be in a specific time. Before we jump into the next part, I should specify I'm not a financial advisor or planner, and this video is for education and entertainment purposes only. When it comes to investing, keep in mind that your capital is always at risk and that you should always do your own research. If you need further help, seek the advice of a certified professional. Now, for everyday investors like you and me, the question arises, should we buy into BITO? I won't, and the reason is contango. If you don't know what this term means, don't worry about it. It refers to the difference between the future price and the current price of an asset. Let's take a one-year chart of Bitcoin, for example. As you can see, in late October 2020, Bitcoin was trading at around $13,000, whereas today the price is $60,000. If you bought a Bitcoin futures contract back then, maybe the future price of Bitcoin would not be $60,000, but it could very well be around $30,000. Jumping 1 year later, you would have lost $27,000 compared to if you bought Bitcoin back in October. If you want to buy BITO, Freedom24 is where I would do it. It's a free online trading platform for which you can sign up using the link down in the description and earn one free stock in the process. I would buy the actual asset using Coinbase and then transferring my Bitcoin to BlockFi to earn some interest. Sign-up links and some bonuses are also in the description. Institutional investors are smart enough to know this. Why do they buy it? Because in some cases, it's their only way of getting exposure to Bitcoin. And when it comes to financial institutions and firms such as pension funds and so on, regulations are much stricter because people's money are on the line. For some reason, holding Bitcoin is riskier than holding dollars. Anyway, that's the world we live in. In this case, the only way for such an entity to gain Bitcoin exposure is either by investing in a company with high Bitcoin exposure, such as MicroStrategy, or through an ETF, such as BITO. That's their only option, which is great news for us Bitcoin holders, because this means more people are buying into the asset we're already holding, hence the higher price appreciation we will enjoy. Some other Bitcoin ETFs are also in the works. Valkyrie are also coming out with their own Bitcoin futures ETF, trading with ticker symbol BTFD. This is internet jargon for buy the dip. And Grayscale, which is another investment company that currently owns the largest Bitcoin trust, announced that they have filed for a Bitcoin ETF that will this time track the actual or the spot price of Bitcoin. In terms of other crypto ETFs, there are talks about an Ethereum ETF in the works. However, these are just rumors for the moment. I myself don't think it's completely improbable for an Ethereum ETF to shortly follow. This was all for BITO, the first Bitcoin futures ETF. Regardless of whether you're buying it or not, this is another move of Bitcoin towards the mainstream, and it will also ease the minds of some existing doubters. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button and share it with anyone you think might find it useful. And let me know down in the comments if you're buying BITO, if you're buying Bitcoin, or if you think that Bitcoin's price has capped. You can find some sign-up bonuses in the description. And until we meet again, don't stop investing. Cheers.